In today's episode, Chuck and I take a deep dive into the application of technology in instructional design and in K through 12 classrooms. We are going to be joined by Paul Kellerman. He is an adjunct instructor with UMBC's Learning and Performance Technology graduate program. You have instructional design questions. We discuss answers. Paul Kellerman is the Computer Science Department Chair at Mount St. Joseph High School in Baltimore, Maryland. He has taught over 30 years and specializes in programming and web development. He also assists his colleagues with the implementation of technology both in the classroom and online. Paul is a 2002 graduate of the ISD program at UMBC and has taught the Introductory Instructional Technology course, LAPT 681, a survey of instructional technology applications, for 20 years. He finds teaching in the ISD program rewarding, especially when hearing success stories from former students and alumni. It is impressive to Paul that people in varied fields can often immediately apply what they learn in the ISD program to instructional design. Welcome, Paul, to the show. We're so happy to have you here with us today.
Thank you for having me.
Paul, I can't tell you what a pleasure it is for me to be able to be on this channel and talk instructional design with someone who was a student of mine way back in the 1800s, I think. I'm not sure. I don't remember exactly. But you were a student. You were a tremendous student. In fact, I kept your final project for years as an example, believe it or not. And you are one of the few of our students that have gone on to become faculty. And that is not only a prestigious kind of an issue, but it's an honor in the sense that now to be able to teach among your peers and prepare this next generation of instructional designers for the world that faces them is so incredibly important. And I'm just amazingly proud of you. But the
Thank
one
you.
thing that I really think is important for tonight and for this discussion is that you're in the K-12 world and you love it there and you're doing tremendous things there. And I think that there's this misunderstanding about instructional design. It's only about big corporations or large projects or whatever people think in their mind that it's about. And it's not. It's just as much in K-12 as anywhere. And I think you represent in a great way how people have taken this and done tremendous things. So I think as we go through this, people should bear in mind that this is not the stereotypical instructional designer that we have here in Paul. What we have is somebody who's taken this and used it in ways that perhaps you hadn't thought about. So welcome.
Thank you very much, Chuck.
Paul, it's wonderful to have you here because, well, first of all, I just had you as my instructor for a course that I took at UMBC this semester. It was a technology course in Captivate, and I was captivated. Literally, I absolutely loved the class. I loved making my module. It's a module that I can go now and do something with, probably put it up on a, just as a freebie out there just to get my feet wet and to enjoy the process of creating a course module and creating content that hopefully is valuable to somebody out there. So thank you for that. You were a great instructor. And
Thank you so
you
much.
kept us all really engaged, and I think that everybody had a really good time. And the outcomes of all of our presentations that we did at the end of the semester was a testament to your great instruction. There was some really
Thank you.
great
I
things.
just try to plant the seed. Everyone does that work. I tell them in the beginning, you're going to make it at the end. And I know everyone has some points of stress, but we made it, didn't we?
We made it. We did. I didn't have to pull out too much of my hair. So, Paul, to start us off, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and particularly your ISD path and your current role that you're doing right now?
Okay. So in 1999, that was my first class with Chuck, and it was my last class at CCBC, Catonsville, where I finished up a computer programming certificate. So that my last class at CCBC was my first class at UMBC. And by doubling up a lot and really concentrating, I think I was finished in about 2 years,
Yeah, just right
2002.
at 2 years. Yeah.
I was lucky that I had some time in the summer. I think I took three each
Mhm.
summer courses. And yeah, I've been with the program. I suppose, what was it? The semester that I took um, we call Survey of Instructional Technology Applications. So it was EDUC 681. Actually, back then it was 640, and
Yeah, 640, 641, 642.
all out of sequence. Yeah.
Of
So,
course.
uh, but I ended up that semester. Was familiar with a number of tools, and I spoke to the instructor at the time, and I said, "Hey, I don't mean to sound, kind of pompous here, but I know a lot of this stuff. Could I help you out with some, sort of TA on the side?" And she said, "Sure." And next thing I knew, I was teaching it that summer as a TA, but I wasn't the instructor of record, but I did the work. And then a year later, it was all mine, and it's been
Yeah.
ever since.
And we're very happy that you did that.
Thank you. Yeah, I've just found my place, and I'm always filling that role. And between a number of different directors we've had over the years, it's something and we have a number of other instructors that have been with us for 20 years. I know Greg Walsh was with us a long time, Rafi Ahmad.
Oh,
So a
very
number
well.
of people just very solid, want to stay with the program, have a lot of fun with it, and almost it's almost not like work sometimes. So
Well, if you don't want to be paid, we can work it out. It's like an
it's
avocation for you, Paul.
not what I meant. Not what I meant.
Good to
So,
clarify. Very good to clarify.
but now with UMBC, continuing. It's every spring and fall now, and of course everything is online. And I remember not too long ago we were moving. 681 was the last course to be fully online in that tech track, and so once we had that going, that was it. We did run sort of the experimental with Dr. Williams. We had the summer session was online, and eventually it became the summer session was now the in person, and the other semesters were mainly the online. And now that's exclusively what we have.
Yeah.
So,
It sort of flip flopped. Could you talk about your K through 12 experience at this point?
okay, well, I've been teaching 30 years, 28 at Mount St. Joseph High School, which is really just down the road from UMBC. Um, wow, what a long and winding road, a long, strange trip. So yeah, I started out teaching math full time, and then, like I said, I went back to school at CCBC Catonsville. My wife worked there at the time. She said, you can go for free. So I started up with I was always good at computers, so I had to make it official. So I went through the program there, and then became computer science department chair, kind of out of nowhere, forming the department. And I had a web design course, which was really the initial push right there in the late 90s. And ever since then, wow, there's things I don't teach anymore because it doesn't exist. Flash is one of them.
Oh,
Uh,
really?
Really, I was really good at Flash. It's
Yeah,
gone. I
I
was
recall some of those flash moments. Yeah,
oh
I mean, that's kind of this whole evolution, right? Trying to keep up.
it's just the thing I say is you don't unlearn it. You have to do your transferable skills. There are computer languages that I don't teach anymore. It's Visual Basic. It's too bad. But then I had to develop things to keep up with the time. So Python and MATLAB are the two most recent courses that I've developed and taught them for about 5 years. So it's all computer programming. They still have me in with a math class. It's a rogue section of geometry that I enjoy, but I teach 5 different preparations. So I don't teach the same thing every period. It's 5 different things. And most teachers have maybe 2 different subjects they teach. Nah. So it's fun, and all different levels. Freshmen with computer applications, here's how to turn it on. Then you have these kids in MATLAB and that's Matrix Laboratory. Most people don't know what it is, but it's statistical software. It's these kids are smarter than I am, so they're great. They just take the ball and run with it and create some wonderful projects of their own. And these are boys that they'll be engineers and scientists and such.
Well, I think
When they
that's
get to
fascinating.
college.
And the thing that I think that you can inform our audience about is how your background in your master's instructional design has impacted what you do in terms of course design now for this population.
So for the courses I've had to develop from scratch. So with Python, for instance, it wasn't an adjustment from some other language. what I had to do, really did it the summer prior to teaching it. And I had to look at, first off, what's the big picture? What do we want to do overall? And that's a big thing we push at St. Joe in general. What's the big picture, trickle down, start with the end in mind. And I say, okay, these are the topics we have to do. Then we look at the objectives and what builds from another. And programming like math and foreign language is very cumulative and it's stepwise. So um, just looking at it that way, and the things, of course, objectives. I know a lot of my colleagues, we talk about objectives and goals and they get things mixed up. And I say, well, you can't just say they're going to understand this. I said, how are you going to measure this? So a lot of times I throw some ISD and ADDIE stuff at them, and they're, but
And they're still
they
talking to you.
they get it. Yes, they are. Yes, they are.
See, and that's the part of this that I think is so fascinating is to the uninitiated, goals are the deal, and words like successful and learn and all the other things that people want to throw into objectives that we as designers know don't allow us to evaluate mastery at all. And it goes to this philosophy of what we're trying to do. If we're trying to broadcast and entertain, it's one thing. If we're trying to educate and get to mastery, it's a different path. And I think sometimes it's more difficult in a K-12 environment. Is that true, or am I missing some truth that I
Well,
perhaps I'm not aware of?
K-12, you can say, well, your audience does vary because a freshman 15-year-old versus a almost adult 18-year-old, they could be in the same class.
Yeah,
And so you have to figure out that heterogeneous mix of, am I getting to those older kids? Is it too baby and the younger kids? So that is difficult when it's at that level. And also if it's a college prep level versus
yeah,
in honors and some of the other groups where it's very heterogeneous. So there's students who could work at a different level, others that could go up to honors. So you're in the middle there. College prep is difficult to teach. Um, so the audiences vary. And even if you say, hey, they are all boys, that might make it a little bit easier. I have taught co-ed before, but having the same gender might be a bit easier. But like I said, they're mixed up, and just the hormones and the adolescence and all that makes everyone quite different and unique.
yeah. It must be an incredible challenge, and I would think as much as your population can vary in one particular section of what you teach, we see that in adults too in different ways. But as you brought up, and certainly correctly, there are sometimes the emotional parts of this population that adults certainly have their issues, but going through adolescence and all the things that that encompasses with peer pressure and
Mhm.
especially the last 14 months with gosh knows what's going on with anybody. That's got to be really challenging for you both as an instructor and as a designer.
A-
Right?
And I was going to ask about the challenges that Chuck just mentioned, challenges of the pandemic. And how did those challenges affect your perspective on training and education?
Well, we had to shift gears right away. We had to take what we last spring, I should say, we went into this panic mode. We knew what we had to do for the rest of the year, but we also knew we had to lighten up on the students because their responsibilities with organization, along with the stress involved, and there was so much uncertainty back then that people really were more scared than we might be today.
Yeah.
That emotional toll, the students thinking, what am I going to happen with the end of the year? My grades, I've been working hard all year, and now this new format's just not working for me. So we were very compassionate. We actually did not have final exams. We did some cumulative work in the fourth quarter, but to have a final that was worth 10% of the final grade was, we felt we had to kind of cut them a break there. And this year coming back, we are again very forgiving with certain deadlines. Students are sort of taking advantage of it. But from a psychological point, we don't know what is going on in their lives outside of school. And students can have a smile on their face, and then we might get a contact from a counselor or someone who says, hey, let's look out for this kid. So that's
Yeah.
part of our patience and compassion there as well.
Yeah, I
Well,
would
that's an
imagine.
incredible role that you have to play. And as an instructional designer, it's kind of the soft part of our skill set is being able to roll all of those issues into what, of course, are the demanding mastery issues that we face. And, for someone who's teaching in K-12 and have gone through this and are maybe feeling very challenged and perhaps don't want to continue in K-12,
Mm.
do you see that kind of erosion in teachers? And, are you feeling any of that?
Well, I know many teachers who are near the end of their time. My cousin, for instance, she was thinking last year, well, I could retire next year, or she was around that time and she decided that this really did push her out because she was ready. As
Yeah.
far as teachers leaving the profession because of all these new adjustments, I don't see it here and with my colleagues. In
Hmm.
fact, in some ways, and I do have to say that while this was probably my hardest year ever, I do feel the most accomplished. And I
Yeah.
am kind of proud of what I've done and my colleagues, and that you've survived this. We have 2 more weeks left of school. Um, and many of the things we've learned and had to work so hard for, we're going to keep in our toolbox. We're going to keep working with it next year. All of the online resources, all the things we've had to build, we can certainly just keep using. So it's been an investment in our efforts. I remember on a previous program, Dr. Lynn McPherson said it's an opportunity.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what I felt like last spring. We were just, I said, pushed in the pool. We had a big faculty meeting on Zoom, and I just spoke up and said, hey, and fortunately, one of our administrators, great guy, he was a swim coach. He said, don't worry, you'll be pushed in the pool, but you have other people here to help you. You have lifeguards.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I will say that our administration actually did a great job of getting us ready for that. We knew we were cutting off in mid March, and we had trained the boys up on Zoom, the teachers. We didn't miss a beat. That following Monday, we were all good to go. Fortunately, we have an iPad program. So all the
Mm.
students had a device at home. There was no digital inequity or anything there. So we were very lucky in that regard. But we just kept going with it. And we knew we weren't going to fail because we couldn't fail. There was no other
Yeah.
option. We had to do what we had to do. And other schools, I know some public systems and other schools didn't have the resources. They just couldn't do it. They had to pause for uh, several weeks or months. We were just lucky that we could do what we like to do, and that was just get the job done.
And I think when you approach it with that kind of heart, it sounds like your community came together and had heart and realized what was at stake. It's the kids' future. And we have to take the situation as it is right now and jump into the pool, in the deep end of the pool, and all work together to stay afloat and to help these kids thrive in the midst of this chaotic time that we were in. So that's what it sounds like to me. And it must have been amazingly just so challenging. But like you said, on the other side of that, there's growth, and you were able to come out of that more knowledgeable and more adaptable and flexible to whatever life decides to toss our way in the future.
Mhm.
Yeah, so that's a great way to look at it. Speaking of pandemic, can you talk a little bit about the process that it took in terms of rooming to zooming, if you will? So converting material to online and being in a situation that's a hybrid model. Could you talk a little bit about how that adaptability took place?
Well, the tough thing, a lot of people asked about academic integrity and how the boys at home and the ones at school, and we're taking a test, and they get to look, and we so teachers had to come up with different assessments, ways to find out, are they learning the material, are we good with this, without them taking those shortcuts. So adjusting our evaluations there, our assessments, was one thing we needed to do. We've already done a lot of project based, but we had to look at different ways for the students to get engaged, but also reflect that they really knew the material. So a lot of the tools, the new tools that we've used, I'll mention one that it's called Flipgrid, and I actually used at the beginning of the semester, Denise, with the
Yes, you
grad
did.
class.
And I loved that. It was a first class.
And the Flipgrid one thing I liked about it, the students make a video. It can be a reaction to an article that they've read, a discussion we've had, a video they've watched. And what I like about it is we can keep it private. So students who don't want to share it with the rest of the group, who just want to be with me and they're shy, but students who would rather communicate verbally than writing it out can express themselves, and you get to know the kids in a sense that way. And the boys that are home entirely distant, you finally get to see them off of Zoom and in a nice, clearer, clearer picture and audio and just them. So it is tough with classroom community, and as you know, Denise, with people being online, you have to try to generate that. And one way to do it is to share those different projects, comment on each other's, just similar to what we would do on Blackboard, but with that little more personal, punch to it.
Yeah, absolutely. Can you talk a little bit about some of the tools, the instructional tools that you've learned how to use and apply to what you're doing in the classroom?
Okay, well, Flipgrid was new to me. Some others, there's one called Nearpod, and it's sort of like PowerPoint, we'll say, but it has interactive features where you can do a collaboration board. The students can draw and post other items, polling and things like that. So what I try to do with Nearpod, I don't like to do a lot of PowerPoint, but in this, uh, this mode, we'd put the notes and such, but you can embed the videos. You can have the students, again, post their reactions to everything, and you have an interactive engagement there with not only the boys in class, but the boys that might not be on campus. And that was one of my big things, is how do we keep everyone engaged? The students who are at home, I mean, just imagine we had to go through 6.5 hours of school, just us traditionally sitting there and going through. Imagine being home for 6 hours looking at an iPad. And I've seen some of it where the teachers kind of sit there and talk at you, and others where we've got to come up with some games. We have to come up with something to keep everyone involved and to make sure that the boys who aren't on campus still feel part of the class. So Nearpod helped a bit with that, I'll say. And there's a platform called Edpuzzle, and
Mhm.
Edpuzzle is video clips that you can get from YouTube. It's interesting how it works. You kind of draw it in from the outside, so you don't get the video. You're kind of accessing it, and you can add your own questions, your own comments, notes or audio. So I've looked at some of these and made corrections. So there'll be a video, and I'll say, now wait a minute. We're studying tetrahedrons, but they have a picture of an Egyptian pyramid, which isn't the same kind of pyramid. So in the middle of the video, I can just pause it there and interject, and then the students control it on their own. And it's great with math because you can just pause and say, okay, work out the problem. They can put in a multiple choice or free response, and then you go forward the next part with feedback. And what I'm hoping to do now, I have students making video projects on these Platonic solids, which is dealing with the D&D dice, if you know, 20-sided, all that stuff. So they're going to make those, but they are doing the video, and we want to turn it into an ed puzzle, which is something that they do. So having the students create that product that they see all the time for all different subject areas. Oh, I have to watch an ed puzzle for homework. We have this ed puzzle to do. Well, now I made an ed puzzle with a partner, and this is our work. We can show this off and even put it in their portfolio as a sophomore in high school. Why not? Save your artifacts, save what you do. So that was another tool that I was really happy with. So
So I would argue, and I always do this, and Denise will roll her eyes here, but see, I think this goes back to the instructional design background that you have, because you're talking about things that the uninitiated really wouldn't have any sense of, like Bloom's taxonomy and the competency, contingency, and continuum, and where you bring people in and where you bring people out. And when you get to a level of complexity, I think a lot of times the assumption is you have to do that in person. You can't do these things if you're somehow separated and technology is sitting in the middle. And I think what you've demonstrated is a perfect example of how instructional designers reach in and figure out that they can go beyond just the room to zooming. It's not just about sitting there and broadcasting like you were sitting in front of a class. It's actually about engaging learners at a higher level, way up Bloom, and let's challenge them different ways. Let's get beyond just the notion of this is a concept and isn't that wonderful? Here's another concept. No, let's actually engage it. Let's play with it. Let's get some application of this. Let's get feedback on our performance, and let's create a portfolio. Which we just did a video on portfolios, and you're talking about doing them in high school, and I think that's incredible, Paul.
Right. Thanks.
It really is. And so the curious mindset, the curious part of my mind is wondering, where do you come up with all of these ideas, these tools? Do you have
Yeah.
a resource? Or does it just come out of the top of your creative brain? Because I think a lot of K through 12 instructors out there, maybe some of them are lacking that sort of that resource pool of knowing, how do I engage with these students when I'm in a hybrid model like this? Where did you go to get these resources?
We do have some in-service workshops of our our in-house specialists. And I've done some of this, not so much with these new tools, but years ago I was kind of the guy to go to when something was broken and IT wasn't around, and did some training on different systems we used. Edline is one of those for putting grades and assignments up. Now we use something called Plus Portals, so it's similar to Blackboard, but more on the high school level. One thing I like to do on social media, you've got Twitter especially. There are groups for Nearpod I mentioned, Flipgrid, and Edpuzzle, and all these, and people put up their ideas, and the moderators, whoever run those, are very good because they'll give examples of projects and the dialogue you get, and it is very friendly. It's not like some anti-social media, as I call it, but that we help each other. It's collaboration. There's so many teachers out there. I don't know how they have the time, but they'll create content and offer it freely. And they just say, "Hey, build upon it." Sort of a Creative Commons idea, because they were once in that position. And we all appreciate help whenever we get it, but especially the younger teachers. And as they got the energy, they get a little bit older and a little bit more familiar. They become the expert, and then they help out not only the ones less experienced than they are, but the veterans who are trying to keep up with all those changes. So.
Yeah, this has been a really insightful conversation, and I feel like a lot of people are going to, a lot of K through 12 instructors are going to take some value out of this and think about the resources and think about joining communities where a community of learners, if you will, in order to be able to empower each other and to be able to deliver better classroom instruction for the youth that are out there who need this quality instruction so much. So that's fantastic. In closing out, is there any other, do you have any other thoughts on this that you want to share that we haven't asked you?
Well, I did want to mention concerning engagement is one thing in Zoom that I like to use are the breakout rooms. And what happens there, if you pair students up, you can have students off campus with ones on campus. And I always try to mix it up so that they feel, again, part of the class. I just think that's a great tool to keep everyone involved and everyone engaged, and not to say, well, you're the guy at home, so you're kind of not as important because you're not here in front of me type of thing. When I started out, I would tell people I'm teaching to the kids online. Now, to put that in context, I thought it was so important to keep them, because initially we were all distance. And then when the hybrid came back, there weren't as many who came. And as things have moved along, now we have actually now we're uh, full time. So some students are still every other in the cohort system. Some are still online, but some are every day. And again, to keep everyone involved, to me is important. Teaching to the students online was a way for me to bring them in. But then, of course, the students in front of you, I'll tell you the techniques I had to use. I'm fortunate because many things I could do right online, sharing the screen, what I might normally do up on a whiteboard or with a smart projector put up, I could do it all right on my computer because they could see it in Zoom. And some of the advantages were also, rather than just seeing me do it, one thing I can do is say enter code into an online interface. You enter the code, you click the button, it shows you the result. Well, now they're doing it at the same time. So I'll say, okay, you're in the Zoom, you see what I have. Let's go over to your resource and take care of it there. So it's similar to what we actually do in our class, where you kind of view it, you do it, and you can do, come back and discuss it. So I do enjoy some of the tools of Zoom, and it's not going to go away. We're not sure about next fall. But I'll tell you, I would still use Zoom in some capacity if everyone was right in front of me.
I mean, this is a perfect example of how a really smart person who has a great bachelor's underscored by an incredible master's degree in instructional design goes out and does things that other people ought to be modeling and thinking about. So I would say to you, if you struggled in the K-12 environment or any environment in the last 14 months, be Paul. Take on the challenge that's in front of you, find really clever and important ways to do things, but more importantly, base it on the science of instructional design. This is how people learn. This is how we get them from A to B. And then find these wonderful associated tools and software and social media and everything else that's available to us. And don't just be happy trying to replicate the classroom at any level of instruction. Be more clever than that. Go out there and reach and find and validate your product, and then share it with your audience and your learners. And Paul, you've done such an incredible job of that. Thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you. Thank you, Chuck. Thank you, Denise. I don't get any spin the wheel.
Well, we can do the half questions if you're up for it.
We can
we
certainly-
decided to
Looked at other
spare you,
programs.
but now if you're
Okay.
asking for it,
Oh,
Denise,
yes.
If you're asking for it,
asking.
Paul, I'm
Yeah,
going to get the
Paul,
wheel. So
as my
Okay.
hang
friend,
tight for a moment.
Paul, since you've asked for it, Denise is going to do the half questions. And I take no responsibility for the outcome of this. You're here as an adult of your own volition. So here we go.
Chuck has obviously become the victim of this before. So I did use this on him once, and he was a little nervous. Okay, you ready?
All set.
What is your view on cicadas, seeing as we are
They're
in cicada
delicious.
season?
They're delicious. Now, I was
That's just weird, Paul.
Well, no, I
Great.
saw a sign at a local snowball stand that said chocolate-covered cicadas are coming soon, and I thought, oh, really, really, you're
So
one of
I
those,
was-
Paul?
No. I wasn't tricked, but I was, let's just say 34 years ago, I worked at Patapsco State Park, and there was a crazy ranger, and he said, I'm going to cook these up. Now, I didn't see him do it. He did what you had to do, and he cooked them up, some garlic, and he brought them out to the picnic table, and he told all the younger people, you want to try this. So I just kind of closed my eyes, and I said, I'm not going to think about what I'm eating. I ate it, and it tasted like shrimp. And I think I had another piece, but that was it. I don't plan on eating them this year.
I think a bite every 17 years might be okay, but that'd be pushing it for me.
Oh,
You want
my.
another half question? Come on.
Yes.
You're in now. You're waist deep.
Yes.
You're not
Oh, I
getting
love
out of this.
I love it.
Okay, this is an easy one. What is your favorite quote? I say easy. If you have one on the top of your head, it's easy.
Wow. Well, let's see. If you choose not to decide, you still have made a choice.
Oh, I use that on the kids all the
Ooh.
time.
Did you hear that one,
Did
Chuck?
Joe ever use that in 681?
But you know what it means. It's a famous lyricist,
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's
Neil Peart,
tremendous.
the drummer for
yeah.
Rush.
That is a
Rest
powerful
in
statement.
peace. Rest in peace, Neil.
That's right. Okay.
One more?
Yeah,
Are
we
you-
could do every
How much
one.
time do you have? I mean, we
As
can
long
do
as
this
you
all
have.
night
I mean,
I've
because we
got-
don't have lives.
yeah, like
if you
I've-
have a life, we'll stop. but
Yeah, like I've got 10
Denise
of
and I
these
don't have
questions.
lives. So
I
It's up
spend
to
my
you.
day in front of a camera like this, so
yeah,
this is
so
just my life.
I have to tell you, I watched the other programs, and so I know some of the questions. So
I changed
Oh.
them.
Oh,
I
no.
changed
No.
them
Oh,
since
no.
you've been here. Yeah,
Say,
since you-
Paul, come
mhm.
on. Come
Yes,
on.
yes,
We're
yes.
on
I
to
had all the
that.
answers ready.
You think we're going to keep doing
No.
the same ones over and over?
Oh, Paul.
Let's see.
Okay.
Here's a fun one. Are
Yep.
UFOs real? It's $1 million question.
They are real, but the
Yes.
little green men are not real.
Now, wait a minute. Wait. Well, how can you have one without the other?
Oh, I know what he's going to say.
It's unidentified, it's flying, and it's an object. It doesn't mean it has to be piloted. It could be a a UAV, it could be, drone, it could.
He just took
You
the
asked the
wind out of
question.
your sail.
You
Just
asked the question.
commit. No, no, no.
So obviously we know Chuck's take on this.
Well, there's no doubt about my take on it. Absolutely. I've been abducted, I'm sure. There's no other explanation for my behavior. So I absolutely agree.
All right.
There you have it.
You're speechless, Paul.
Okay. Great. I don't know what happens over on the bay. I guess you're on the bay.
No, I'm West
Um,
Virginia now.
He's in the
So you're in
mountains
the west
now.
now.
Yeah, he's in the
Yeah,
mountains.
I'm up in the hills. Yeah.
Stranger things happen there, right?
Every night.
I mean, that's where they go for the abduction.
Are you kidding me?
And out
Oh
west.
my
We
gosh.
just sit on the porch and wait for the lights. It's all right. That's how we work.
Oh, it's hilarious. This has been fun. Thank you
Yes.
for
Thanks
thank
so
you
much,
for
Paul.
indulging in
Having
our
me.
humor.
This
Being
is
a
great.
good
It's good.
sport, and more importantly, being such an incredible person and instructional designer. And that's a
Thank you.
combination I cherish and respect greatly. So thank you, my friend.
Yeah,
And
thank
Chuck,
you.
thank you really for planting the seed, because as many people know, taking 602, we just keep moving. And I've said a number of students will join for a certificate program. And after a few courses, they get sucked in and they get hooked, and then they end up getting their master's. They don't even realize it. And one thing I
Yeah.
love to see, I'll mention, is when my own students, before they even graduate, tell me success stories and say, "Hey, I've shown
Right.
my employer some of the work I've done. Here we go. They're giving me projects. They have faith in me now. They know I'm going to finish what my plan is." And I just love hearing success stories down the road. Emails saying, "I got a promotion here. I moved on to greener pastures there." You really feel accomplished that you can help other people out. So I love it.
And
That's why we do it.
just know that you are an integral part of that whole thing, Paul.
Thank you, Chuck.
Well,
And
this has
thank you,
been
Denise.
You're very welcome. This has been a pleasure. Thank you so much for being here with us. Thank you for everyone who tuned in and listened to this interview. We hope that you took a lot out of it and found some great value in it. If you have any questions, please don't hesitate to ask us in the comments. We are happy to answer those questions for you. And don't forget to hit subscribe if you want to learn ways to become a better instructional designer. Thank you.